Tonight, we begin in a city once swallowed by fire, where the sky itself seemed to have cracked open and spilled a terrible, unrelenting light. You trudge through streets piled high with rubble, the air thick with dust, and the ghosts of what was feeling the weight of silence, heavier than the debris beneath your feet. Hiroshima, in the immediate aftermath of August the 6th, 1945, was less a city and more a vast flattened landscape, a place where familiar sounds and faces had vanished like smoke. Before we begin, if this little corner of calm has brought you any comfort, feel free to like the video and subscribe, only if it feels genuine to you. No pressure. I'd also love to hear from you. Just drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. It's always special to know we're all quietly gathered here from different corners of the world like a family, scattered but still connected. All right, now go ahead and dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan or a soft hum in the background, something that feels like home. Nestle in Get Cozy, and let's ease into tonight's story together. You stumble through the first days where survival means finding water, food, and shelter in the midst of overwhelming ruin. The city is a ghost town, but pockets of humanity persist, determined to cling to life. Official efforts to clear debris are slow, almost symbolic, as the scale of destruction feels insurmountable. But in quiet corners, survivors begin to sift through rubble for anything salvageable, fragments of homes, letters, photographs, each a precious thread in the tapestry of their vanished lives. The first relief teams arrive bringing meager aid, but it's often the neighbors themselves who act fastest, digging with bare hands and makeshift tools, trying to piece together a semblance of order. You might expect despair to have the final say, yet instead, there's a fragile hope flickering in the resilience of those who refuse to be erased. Historians still argue whether the immediate response was slowed by the chaos of war's end or by government hesitance to reveal the bomb's devastating reality, but it's clear that the physical and emotional shock paralyzed many efforts. Meanwhile, an intriguing yet lesser-known fact lingers. Some survivors report that, oddly, the heavy rains that followed the bombing washed away toxic ash, creating brief moments of cleaner air amidst the poison. It's a quirky, almost poetic contrast, the sky's fury followed by nature's quiet cleansing. You can almost imagine the city itself breathing in that brief reprieve, gathering strength for the long journey ahead. The cleanup is not just physical but deeply symbolic. To clear the wreckage is to say, we will live. Yet the scale of devastation means this process is painfully slow, measured in small, careful steps. As the first months pass, you notice survivors gathering around remnants of landmarks, what was once a bustling market, a temple, or a school, clinging to memories as lifelines. The land feels haunted, yet it pulses with the faint heartbeat of hope. You pause, feeling the weight of history pressing down, knowing this is the very soil where tragedy and resilience will forever intertwine. You return to the city's edges, where the familiar has been distorted beyond recognition, the streets fractured like a broken mirror, reflecting a life you once knew. Families begin to emerge, tentative and uncertain, stepping carefully through ruins that used to be homes. They arrive not as conquerors of destruction, but as pilgrims to memory, seeking the remnants of the everyday, the cracked kitchen tiles, the twisted bed springs, the faded wallpaper, curling like tired smiles. The pull of home is magnetic, even when home feels more like a ghost than a place. You watch as parents call out softly to children who have yet to appear, their voices carrying on a wind heavy with silence and sorrow. Here in this strange landscape, they choose to rebuild their lives, step by shaky step. The government slowly encourages resettlement, but the reality is grim. Many areas are deemed uninhabitable due to radiation, an invisible enemy that breathes fear into the hearts of survivors. Yet human stubbornness defies the odds. People return not just because they must, but because the roots of community run deep. There's an odd and tender image from those days, Some survivors carried with them pets, cats and dogs, as if these small creatures were talismans of normalcy and comfort amidst the chaos. You might smile at this, imagining a lone dog trotting past bombed-out shops, a tail wagging defiantly at the darkness. Historians still argue whether the resettlement policies were humane or rushed. Some suggest authorities pressured survivors to return too quickly, risking further health consequences. What's less debated is the bittersweet nature of these returns. Neighborhoods that once bustled with life are now half empty, the echoes of laughter replaced by cautious greetings. One fringe but fascinating detail is that in early post-war Hiroshima, some residents practiced what could be called ghost farming, tending to fields that lay fallow, sometimes even in areas considered dangerously irradiated, because the urgency to survive outweighed fear. It's a haunting testament to human resilience and risk-taking. You follow a family as they walk through what remains of their street, each step stirring dust and memories. The father gestures toward a skeletal frame of what was once their home, now just a crooked wooden skeleton silhouetted against the dimming sky. His children cling close, wide-eyed but quietly brave. Despite everything, there's a determination here that you feel deep in your bones, the will to reclaim life, to reweave the fabric of community torn apart by disaster. This is the beginning of Hiroshima's long, winding road back from oblivion. You wander now into the heart of the rebuilding challenge, where the physical and emotional landscapes of Hiroshima intertwine in complex ways. The streets you once knew are unrecognizable, their bones shattered, infrastructure crippled beyond simple repair. Water pipes burst, power lines lie twisted and dead, and roads are often impassable, cloaked beneath mounds of rubble that seem to mock the city's once bustling energy. You watch as crews of survivors and workers labor together with the raw tools of human will, shovels, pickaxes, wheelbarrows to clear debris, often improvising solutions from scraps of wood and metal. There's a gritty beauty in these scenes, a stubborn commitment to restoration that defies despair. Rebuilding isn't just about structures, it's about restoring the very rhythm of daily life. Markets need to reopen so people can trade, schools must welcome children to anchor hope in education, and hospitals require steady hands to care for the wounded and ill. Yet resources are scarce, materials limited, and the broader Japanese economy itself is reeling from war's devastation. You note the inventiveness that springs from necessity. Residents repurpose fallen timbers into makeshift homes, craftsmen recycle bricks and tiles, and neighbors share tools in a communal spirit. There's a curious quirk in this phase. Some builders used leftover concrete mixed with river sand and, surprisingly, crushed oyster shells as aggregate, giving the foundations a subtle shimmer under the sun. It's a reminder that even in ruin, creativity finds a foothold. Historians still argue whether the initial reconstruction plan favored speed over safety, especially considering radiation concerns, but it's undeniable that the sheer will to rebuild pushed boundaries. You pause to reflect on the city's blueprint, which initially aimed to restore the pre-war urban fabric, but soon shifted toward creating open spaces and parks, partly to prevent future overcrowding and partly to respect the land's trauma. This shift hints at a deeper transformation. Hiroshima was not just rebuilding buildings but also reimagining what a city could be after unimaginable loss. In one poignant moment, you watch an elderly woman smoothing the rough edges of a rebuilt doorway with her hands whispering a prayer, or perhaps a memory, as if each stone carried a story waiting to be told again. The mix of hope, sorrow, and determination is palpable, and you understand that Hiroshima's rebuilding was as much about healing hearts as it was about bricks and mortar. Even now, the city carries these scars, visible and invisible, a testament to the enduring spirit of its people. You step deeper into the shadows cast by the bomb's invisible legacy, where health becomes a battlefield unseen but fiercely fought. Radiation, that silent, lingering enemy, begins to reveal its toll in subtle but devastating ways. People start falling ill, hair, thinning skin breaking out in strange patterns, and strange ailments appearing months after the blast. The term atomic bomb disease enters the local vocabulary, a chilling phrase that both names and denies the enemy's full nature. You see clinics overwhelm doctors puzzled by symptoms that don't quite fit known diseases and families grappling with uncertainty, fear, and the unbearable weight of waiting. The fear of radiation's effects is nearly as paralyzing as the bomb itself. Medical professionals, many still struggling with limited supplies and infrastructure, embark on a difficult quest to understand and treat these new illnesses. Studies begin often underfunded and hindered by political sensitivities, but the quest for knowledge persists. You might be surprised to learn that some early Hiroshima survivors turned to traditional herbal remedies alongside modern medicine, blending science and folklore in a desperate attempt to soothe the body and spirit. It's a delicate dance between the old and the new, the seen and the unseen. Historians still argue whether the Japanese government fully acknowledged radiation's dangers in those early years or downplayed them to encourage resettlement. But what's undeniable is the courage of survivors who faced stigma and discrimination while battling mysterious illnesses. A less known but remarkable fact is that some survivors formed informal support groups, precursors to today's hibakusha organizations, creating networks of empathy and advocacy before any official recognition. These groups helped break isolation, allowing people to share their stories and fight for recognition together. You watch a mother carefully wash her child's clothes in the river, her eyes wary of every splash, knowing the water might carry unseen poison. The city's recovery is thus not only about buildings and streets, but also about confronting an enemy that lingers in bodies and minds long after the skies have cleared. Radiation's shadow extends beyond the physical damage coloring lives, with anxiety, hope, and resilience, in equal measure, a haunting reminder that healing is never just about the surface. You find yourself amid the quiet hum of a community slowly stitching itself back together, thread by fragile thread. Here, neighbors who barely knew one another before the blast now share stories, food, and the occasional cautious smile, forming bonds born from shared tragedy. In this reborn Hiroshima, social ties become lifelines. Neighbors check in on each other, sharing scarce resources and volunteering to help rebuild homes and gardens. You can almost hear the whispered promise in their gestures: we will not face this alone. The city's social fabric, once torn to shreds, now begins a tentative mending woven with grief, humor, and remarkable generosity. Volunteers from outside Hiroshima arrive too, doctors, relief workers, and sometimes curious visitors bringing aid and fresh perspectives. They become part of this complex social dance, sometimes welcomed warmly, other times met with suspicion. You might smile at an odd little story. Some aid workers brought portable radios, and music became a surprising balm, spreading hope through songs that floated above the ruins like delicate lanterns. Music, it seems, was one of the first medicines the city embraced, knitting people together in shared experience. Historians still argue whether the spontaneous formation of community groups was more effective than official government programs in the early recovery years, but what is clear is that these grassroots efforts created resilience beyond bricks and mortar. You might find it curious that some of these informal groups held meetings in open fields or under the scant shade of damaged trees, turning nature itself into a gathering space when buildings were unsafe or unavailable. It's a vivid reminder that recovery was not confined to formal halls, but lived in everyday human connection. Walking through a makeshift neighborhood, you observe a group gathered around a shared meal, after rising softly against a backdrop of rebuilding noise. In moments like these, the city pulses with life, quiet but insistent. It's not just about rebuilding structures, but restoring the human spirit, the unseen architecture of kindness and hope. Remember that dog from the early days? He might now be wagging his tail in approval at the growing warmth between neighbors who once faced the abyss alone. You sense a new energy flowing through Hiroshima, one that transforms sorrow into purpose, a city deciding not only to rebuild itself, but to reshape its identity. Out of the ashes rises a vision, Hiroshima as a beacon of peace, a living monument to the hope that nuclear destruction will never happen again. The seeds of the peace movement take root in town halls, community centers, and whispered conversations fueled by survivors determined to speak out. You imagine the quiet meetings where ideas took shape, where the question wasn't just, how do we rebuild, but what kind of city do we want to be? It's a profound shift, a conscious choice to turn trauma into testimony. This movement gains momentum quickly. Citizens petition governments, hold vigils, and send messages of peace worldwide, striving to ensure Hiroshima's tragedy is never forgotten or repeated. A quirky detail: some activists famously sent paper cranes as symbols of hope and healing, a delicate origami tradition that blossomed into an enduring icon of peace. You might even chuckle at the image of volunteers folding cranes by candlelight, their fingers deft despite exhaustion, crafting tiny wings for the city's soaring aspirations. Historians still argue whether the peace movement's early success was driven more by grassroots passion or political necessity, but there's no denying that Hiroshima became a global voice against nuclear weapons. The city's unique experience gave it moral authority and a poignant message that resonated far beyond its borders. One fringe but fascinating debate concerns how much influence international visitors had on shaping local activism. Did the influx of foreigners inspire more ambitious peace campaigns, or did it risk overshadowing survivors' own voices? Either way, Hiroshima's story became a tapestry woven with many hands. You walk through a park dedicated to peace, the air scented faintly with cherry blossoms, and feel the weight of history softened by hope. Here, every stone, every monument, every folded paper crane speaks not just of loss, but of resilience. The city's commitment to peace is a quiet roar, a promise whispered to the wind and the future alike, a vow that the horrors you've witnessed will shape a better world. You notice the city's heartbeat quickening in unexpected places, workshops, factories, and bustling markets that pulse with a new kind of life. Hiroshima's economy, once crippled by devastation, begins to stir with a blend of old trades and new ambitions. Local artisans, who had once crafted delicate ceramics and textiles, find ways to adapt and survive, while small manufacturers restart production, determined to reconnect Hiroshima to the broader Japanese and global economies. It's a story of gritty perseverance where the scent of solder and fresh paint mingles with the dusty air of reconstruction. Surprisingly, Hiroshima even attracts international interest during this rebirth. Some foreign companies and relief organizations extend a helping hand or show curiosity about the city's unique recovery, bringing resources and expertise that mix awkwardly with local customs and pride. You might smile at a quirky anecdote from the time a visiting delegation once sent a batch of peace silk garments made from special fibers, said to soothe radiation burns, blending science and hope in one soft fabric. Whether these actually worked is up for debate, but the gesture symbolized a broader desire to support Hiroshima's renewal. Historians still argue whether the influx of international aid helped or complicated Hiroshima's economic recovery, as some locals feared dependence or loss of autonomy. Yet the economic rebirth was undeniable, a slow but steady return to productivity, jobs, and a sense of purpose. Markets reopened with fresh energy, street vendors hawked goods with renewed cheer, and a new generation of entrepreneurs emerged eager to rewrite Hiroshima's economic story. In this mix of old and new, you see how recovery wasn't simply about rebuilding structures, but revitalizing the lifeblood of community and trade. Watching a craftsman carefully repaint a damaged signboard for his shop, you feel a deep connection to the city's renewal. Each brushstroke is a defiant act of hope, a reminder that even amid the ruins, life insists on flourishing. Hiroshima's economic comeback is a testament not only to the human capacity to endure, but to invent, adapt, and dream again. You stroll through streets where the new and old mingle in an uneasy dance, the city's rebuilt facades often hiding scars beneath their clean surfaces. Architecture in Hiroshima is not just about shelter, it's about memory, identity, and the difficult task of honoring what was lost while embracing the future. Some buildings rise with sleek modern lines, symbols of progress and hope. Others remain deliberately preserved as ruins or memorials, raw reminders of the bomb's destructive power. You find yourself pausing before the iconic A-bomb dome, the skeletal remains of the former prefectural industrial promotion hall, standing as both a ruin and a monument defying time and neglect. The debate over how Hiroshima should remember its past is ongoing and deeply felt. Historians and city planners still argue whether preservation or renewal best serves healing. Should the city erase painful reminders to move forward or keep visible scars as solemn lessons? This tension shapes the urban landscape. You might find it curious that some early plans included demolishing the A-bomb dome entirely, but public outcry preserved it, turning it into an international symbol for peace and resilience. The dome's haunting silhouette against the sky is at once a warning and a hope, frozen in time but alive in memory. Less well known is that local artists and architects experimented with integrating damaged materials into new constructions, embedding fragments of rubble and bent steel as tactile connections to the past. It's a subtle form of storytelling, a reminder that the city's foundation is literally built on memory. You imagine walking through a neighborhood where a rebuilt wall cradles shards of shattered glass, catching the light like scattered stars, scars transformed into beauty. In this architectural conversation, Hiroshima wrestles with itself daily, balancing the desire to heal with the need to remember. It's a city learning to wear its history openly, neither hiding nor being defined solely by tragedy. And as you walk these streets, you realize that the city's buildings, both new and old, are silent storytellers inviting you to listen to the whispers of resilience carried by every stone. You find yourself stepping into classrooms and theaters where the soft murmur of voices and the rustle of pages bring a new kind of life to Hiroshima's recovery. Education becomes a vital thread in the city's healing tapestry. Schools reopening with modest supplies and eager children, teachers determined to restore normalcy amid ongoing uncertainty. You imagine the bittersweet sight of children studying under makeshift roofs or sitting on crates, their laughter a fragile counterpoint to the city's still fresh scars. Education is not only about knowledge but about nurturing hope and continuity for a generation that grew up amid loss. Art and culture play a quiet but powerful role here as well. Local artists channel grief and resilience into paintings, poetry, and performances that speak the unspeakable. You might smile at the story of a young poet who used haiku, those tiny, precise poems, to capture the fleeting beauty of cherry blossoms alongside the memory of devastation, weaving sorrow and hope into a delicate balance. Museums and theaters begin to reopen, sometimes in temporary spaces, providing refuge and reflection. This creative expression helps Hiroshima process trauma and tell its story to the world. Historians still argue whether cultural rebuilding should have been prioritized sooner or later, but there's no doubt that these efforts forged a collective identity steeped in remembrance and renewal. A fascinating yet lesser-known fact is that some of the earliest post-war theatre performances incorporated survivors as actors, giving voice to first-hand experiences and fostering empathy in audiences. This blurring of art and history created a powerful dialogue between past and present. You watch a teacher gently guide children in folding paper cranes, a tradition that blossoms into a symbol of peace and healing, knowing that these small hands carry the city's future. Education and culture become more than recovery tools. They become the city's heartbeat, steady and enduring, reminding all who listen that even after the darkest night's dawn eventually comes. You now stand in the Hiroshima of today, a city transformed yet eternally tethered to its past, a living testament to survival, hope, and lessons whispered softly in the breeze. Modern buildings rise alongside verdant parks, their glass facades reflecting sunlight and memories alike. The streets hum with daily life, children play. Near memorials, elders share stories on benches, and visitors from around the world pause in quiet reverence. Hiroshima has become more than a city. It is a symbol, a reminder that from the deepest darkness resilience can bloom, and peace can be sought with unwavering resolve. Walking through the Peace Memorial Park, You feel the gentle weight of history wrapped in serenity. The cenotaph arches gracefully overhead, holding the names of those lost, while the flame of peace flickers, promising that nuclear destruction will someday be extinguished from the earth. Yet the city is not frozen in sorrow, it thrives in innovation culture and community. You might find it heartwarming that the annual peace ceremony, drawing people from across the globe, blends solemn remembrance with joyful celebrations of life, music, and unity, a nuanced dance between grief and hope. Historians still argue about how Hiroshima balances remembrance and progress, whether the city risks becoming a museum of tragedy or a beacon of future possibility. But what remains undeniable is its ongoing commitment to peace education, nuclear disarmament, advocacy, and fostering global dialogue. A quirky detail in recent years, Hiroshima has embraced technology to share survivor testimonies through virtual reality, allowing new generations to hear first-hand stories in immersive ways, bridging time and space with empathy. You pause, feeling the breeze carrying cherry blossoms and whispered promises, sensing that Hiroshima's story is far from over. It is a living narrative, one that asks us to remember, to learn, and to hope. As you close your eyes, you might just hear the soft laughter of children, the rustle of leaves, and the steady, quiet heartbeat of a city that refused to be broken. Tonight, as your eyes grow heavy and the world quiets around you, imagine Hiroshima's story folding gently into the soft embrace of night. The city's scars, once jagged and raw, now shimmer faintly beneath a canopy of stars, their edges softened by time and care. You breathe in the calm, the subtle scent of cherry blossoms carried on a cool breeze, and feel the steady pulse of life continuing onward. The pain of the past remains woven into the fabric of this place, but it no longer dominates. Instead, hope threads through every corner, the laughter of children, the whispers of peace, the quiet determination of a city reborn. Let yourself rest with the knowledge that healing is neither quick nor perfect, but always possible. Hiroshima's journey is a testament to resilience, to the human spirit's capacity to rise, rebuild, and dream anew. In this gentle darkness, allow the city's courage and grace to soothe you like a lullaby sung across generations. You are part of this quiet family, scattered but connected, sharing this moment of calm. Carry this peace with you as you drift towards sleep, knowing that even after the deepest devastation, life finds a way to bloom again.